Welcome back, everybody. Another edition here of the Auburn Undercover podcast on the 24/7 Sports Network. My name is Nathan King. Happy week 3. We have officially reached what is the actual portion of Auburn's schedule in terms of Power 5 opponents, the game that everybody was looking to throughout the offseason. And Jason and Mark, I don't know if you guys have stepped outside this morning, but it feels like fall already. So it's an excellent time to be talking about a game that's going to be 2:30 on CBS. We've already kind of reached that point of the year where it's really starting to feel like football season. And so Auburn, obviously, they welcome Penn State back in their house this weekend. Again, 2:30 on CBS on Saturday. Obviously, Penn State won this game last year in a thriller in State College. It was 28-20. Auburn was just one play away. They had that 4th and goal incompletion as they went for the tying touchdown there. And Mark, we were talking to players yesterday. I talked to the 3 team captains, and they all had some pretty good responses about what they remembered from last year's game. And I really appreciated their transparency on saying that, look, this not only did something that John Samuel Schenker said, this stuck with us for a while, but B, admitting if we had won this game, maybe that gives some better momentum early in the season. Now, obviously, they started 6-2, so it was kind of the best you could have asked for. But clearly, from talking to players, this is something that you don't want to call it a revenge spot or anything like that, because I don't think it goes that deep. But this is one that they've had circled for a while, and as some guys said after the game on Saturday as well, we owe them one. That they're coming into our house now. We're going to try to even the score.
It was really a fun evening of football. It was really hot early in the day up there, and great crowd, almost 110,000, the largest crowd an Auburn team's ever played in front of. And talking to the Penn State people, they said that was exceptionally loud for a crowd. They say the whiteout game is always a big deal to the fans, but considering it was Auburn coming in from the SEC, got a lot of national attention. It was a special day up there, and both teams played really hard. I thought it was one of the best games of the season, just from a general fan's perspective. If you didn't have a rooting interest and say you're watching the game from Denver or Seattle or wherever and just wanted to see a good college football game, that was a good game. And Auburn certainly had its chances to win the game, just didn't play good enough pass defense. You can't let Sean Clifford complete 28 of 32 passes and expect to win a game unless there's some fumbles involved or something strange or punt returns for touchdowns. But you're right, Nathan. Auburn was down there 4th and goal, the 2, with pretty late in the 4th quarter, and had a chance to tie the game up. Then got the ball back with 38 seconds left, and it's 38. Bo Nix hit 3 passes, got him down close to the goal again, but ran out of time. So I can understand why the players are looking forward to this game, because it was an intense game, and Penn State really enjoyed beating Auburn. That was very obvious that Saturday night up there at State College.
Yeah, Jason, like Mark mentioned, it was a great crowd. The whiteout, obviously, you can't beat that kind of experience for any team. But Auburn, it had been since, what was it? It was 1931 was the last time they played a true road game in the Big Ten. Correct? I think we talked about this last year. They played Wisconsin all the way back then. So it had been a minute. But like Mark mentioned, at the end of that game, the celebration and obviously it was such a big win for Penn State to just kind of get that marquee victory over an SEC team. Now Auburn looks to return the favor in what they hope is a very similar environment. It's an orange out, and there was a lot of talk yesterday about the orange jerseys. I got some history lessons from you and Mark and Philip after the press conference, talking about way back in the day with Doug Barfield and how they pulled those orange jerseys out. But Jason, you're not as confident that they'll. I'm not very confident that they'll do it on Saturday, but certainly they hope this will be an environment that is comparable to what they saw in State College last year.
Yeah, I'm not expecting to see orange jerseys now. I think it'll be similar to what we saw last year. They had white face masks, they had white gloves, white sleeves, white shoes. I don't know if we'll see orange shoes or not, but I think we'll see orange gloves and sleeves and those kind of things as a compliment. And that's what we heard. We kept saying, I guess Derek calls it saying accessory or whatever. I think that's kind of the way it'll be Saturday. Yeah, it should be a really good environment, and I keep thinking back to last year, and Penn State won that game, and it was a huge deal for them that day. They still went 7-6. That's my takeaway from this one. It's just another step in a really tough schedule. Winning Saturday doesn't guarantee you're going to win 10 games. But it's better than losing Saturday because that makes it really tough. And so that's what this one is. Winning this one doesn't change things a whole lot, but losing it could. And so that's where this one comes into play for me. I think it's a really evenly matched game because Auburn's at home. That makes this thing, to me, balance a little bit in Auburn's favor going into this one. Now they got to go out and play better than they did Saturday for sure. But the environment's going to be there. The fans are going to be there. The fans were there Saturday night. If not for the fans, they might not have won that game Saturday night against San Jose State. They played a big role in that. Ryan Arson talked about a goal line stand. The goal line stand came from two false starts. That's where that goal line stand came from. Now, the defense stopped them on a couple plays, but man, you back up 10 yards and it changed the whole foundation of that drive. And so I think the fans are going to be there. I think they're going to show up and be excited. And this is an opportunity for this team, no question about it.
Yeah, to me, Jason, we talked about it all offseason. These first 5 games, we kind of set 4-1 as absolutely where you have to go here. To me, that's where this one comes in to play as being the biggest. It's like you said, it's another step toward a big schedule, but also I think you mentioned it. We were on a call the other day. You aren't as confident about beating LSU if you lose this game, and so it's really big for these first 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. I mean, you just don't know about this league. You look at Missouri and go, man, they were terrible. Well, they also turned it over 5 or 6 times. We also Auburn almost lost to Mercer doing the same thing a few years ago, and that team won some games later in the season. So there's not, from this point forward, there's not a game where you can roll the football out there, as they used to say. You can't roll the ball out there on any of these games and just expect to win by playing like they played Saturday. So it's the next step, but it's obviously going to have a lot of eyes on it Saturday.
Mark, we've been talking a little bit about Sean Clifford here. Obviously, you don't expect him to complete 87.5% of his passes again. That was a pretty insane game for him. It wasn't necessarily the most explosive passing game for Penn State there, and Auburn got a few defensive stops, but it just kind of made things impossible toward the end of it to get that offense off the field. But a subject early in the season for them right now has been that pass defense, particularly on the same sort of throws over the middle of the field. They're having trouble. A couple of the guys yesterday referenced it, saying, look, we're having trouble defending slants, quick throws, maybe playing off a little bit too much. And we saw it against Chevin Cordero. He wasn't as efficient throwing the ball, but still they had 5 plays of 20 yards or more throwing the football in a week 2 game where you're prepping for the quarterback who just shredded you to pieces in that regard last season. That wasn't exactly what Auburn needed to see against San Jose State.
Derek Mason was not very aggressive as a defensive coordinator, to say the least. And so far, Jeff Schmedding certainly hasn't been aggressive as a defensive coordinator. We've barely seen anything other than pure base defense. The biggest adjustment has been to bring in extra defensive backs. But I'm curious to see if they mix it up this week, because what they did last year against Penn State did not work. And Auburn certainly had the talent to win that game. I didn't think it was the best coach game from the Tigers, and they need to step it up in that area. And, you'd like to see a corner blitz, maybe a linebacker blitz or safety blitz, just something to keep the quarterback off balance, because Sean Clifford is not real mobile. But, I mean, if you give him a clean pocket back there, he's got 3 really good wide receivers. And if you give him time to throw the ball, he's going to be very effective, and they're going to move the ball up and down the field. So that'll certainly be something to watch. It's a different type of quarterback than Chevin Cordero, who they played last week, who just because you got back there didn't mean you were going to tackle him, because the guy was really mobile. But Penn State's going to have a much more talented offensive line than what San Jose State had. So, watch and see how Auburn's defensive front gets some pressure. or if they get much pressure on the quarterback. That'll be a big key to this game Saturday night, guys.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for a while now, where pass rush and coverage go hand in hand, and we saw them improve in that regard against San Jose State, even though they were playing a slippery quarterback. Still got, I believe, 3 sacks. And Jason, you were watching that video yesterday where it probably should have been 4 sacks because Derek Hall took him down behind the line of scrimmage. Not to dive too deep into Penn State's offense, because obviously we'll do that on the roundtable. But Hall mentioned it yesterday, Jason. This is the most physical, most talented. This is the best offensive line. Obviously they've seen so far, and we keep hearing that. We keep hearing it. And I think it was Derek who said, pretty often during a game he'll get with Jalen Simpson and say, I got you, you got me. We got to be able to do this thing together. They absolutely have to affect Sean Clifford, because, like Mark mentioned, they lose Jahan Dotson, brought in Mitchell Tinsley, the Western Kentucky transfer. He already looks like a really, really impressive player. They've got a lot of weapons on offense, and they absolutely cannot let him just sit back there, because he'll probably have a good shot of replicating that same performance if they do.
Yeah, I mean, he's done it so far this season, and Purdue's defense is better. It's better than it was. It's not great. Ohio's defense not very good, and this offensive line, it's not going to match up to what Georgia has been the last few years, but compared to what Auburn's seen the first 2 weeks, they're going to look like the Washington Redskins with the Joe Gibbs era. I mean, these guys are going to be massive compared to they've been playing guys that weigh 265 pounds the last 2 weeks. Now you're back to what you see in a normal week, and it'll have its challenges. And they had 3 what should have been 4 sacks last week, but Portland State had 7 against that same offense a couple of weeks ago. Now I thought they did a better job of getting the ball out quick, and something I talked about yesterday. I asked Derek Hall about it too. I think Penn State will do the same thing. I don't know that they're going to sit back there and hold the ball a lot, and that's why first and second down are going to be really important for this Auburn defense. They got to put them in third and long situations. In third and long situations, you got to hold the ball a little longer. Then your pass rush has time to get back there. If the opponents keep having third mediums and Auburn is not allowed to get back there, and guys are running free in the secondary and they're playing soft on coverage, then Sean Clifford's going to hit some throws. To kind of think back, it was just a weird game last year. You think about and going, well, the team that maybe either wins the turnover battle or runs the ball better is going to be Auburn. Ran for almost 100 yards more than Penn State last year. The turnovers were even. They lost a game. When those turnovers occur, how you play in the red zone, that's the thing that's going to stand out in this game. And we saw it last week. Auburn's defense was 1-5. They only allowed 1 touchdown and 5 trips to the red zone for San Jose State. The issue was they allowed 5 red zone trips to San Jose State. That's the issue, and you can't get off the field. And it happened to Texas A&M against App State. And if Auburn had been playing somebody that maybe was a little bit better than San Jose State, it would have happened to Auburn last week too. And they can't have that type of game again Saturday.
On the other side of the ball, talking about Auburn's quarterbacks, Mark, it wasn't, probably the most disastrous first quarter, maybe save for pick sixes or San Jose State scoring a bunch off those turnovers. But it was pretty unsightly from this Auburn offense. They actually netted 0 yards across their first 4 drives because they had 20 yards of offense and then 20 yards in penalties. So those first 4 drives essentially went nowhere. They had 2 interceptions, obviously one by TJ Finley, which Brian Harsin has sort of hit on as saying, it was the right read, maybe threw it a second too late, and the DB made a great play. Robbie Ashford's was a little bit more of a head scratcher, kind of threw it 5 or 6 yards behind his guy. But regardless, we saw TJ Finley stick in there. Some people wondered what they were going to do at quarterback. Maybe is this the time where we see Robbie Ashford, just sort of run the ball and try to get him back on track. But to TJ Finley's credit, he closed out the game 12 of 15 over those final 15 passes, 10.5 yards per attempt. That's a pretty solid number. We saw a few good throws there. They weren't nearly as explosive. Something that Jason has brought up multiple times is that they need to be more explosive in the pass game. They were not in this second game as opposed to the Mercer game. But that version of TJ Finley, we've seen it these first couple games. We've seen the head scratchers from him, and then we've seen the moments where he looks calm and collected. He gets broken plays. He's able to stand in there and make the right decision to flip the ball out. that's the kind of quarterback they need to see for the majority of the game on Saturday against, again, the best defense they've seen so far this season.
Yeah, I think Auburn quarterbacks have got to get Penn State off the line of scrimmage. There's 7 guys in the box, maybe 8 guys in the box. Auburn's going to have a hard time running the football because Penn State's got really good talent. They've recruited extremely well. Their roster is going to be talented with 60, 70 players on there. So personnel issues, they're not going to have any problem, Penn State. Now, if Auburn can hit those mid-range passes or maybe even a couple long passes, that could change the equation in this game. And that's been a big concern. Jason and I talked about it a lot. It's like, are some other wide receivers going to step up? Because right now it's basically Shedrick Jackson and Javarius Johnson have almost all the catches in the wide receiver group. And they brought in these freshmen and the 2 transfers to make a difference in the wide receiver group. And so far it hasn't happened. And if this team is going to have a successful season, they've got to have more out of the passing attack. And yeah, the quarterbacks can play better, but the receivers need to play better too. So that's certainly something to watch on Saturday because, there's no guarantee Auburn's offensive line can consistently block Penn State's defensive front. So really interesting game. I think it's going to go a long way to telling Auburn fans and SEC fans how good this Auburn team can be this year.
Yeah, it was a little different than the first week, Jason. We were talking about it yesterday. Still not that much variety in terms of who you're spreading the ball around to a receiver. We saw more Landon King in the game. We did not see Malcolm Johnson because he had an injury. Now, Brian Harsin said we saw him out there for warm-ups. He didn't go through warm-ups, but he dressed out. So Harsin sort of insinuated in an emergency. If they had 5 other receivers get injured, he could have gone in. But he sort of said, a guy like Coy Moore is just going to be a lot more effective because he's healthier. No Xavier Capers in this game. I'm not sure I remember seeing him now that I think about it at the game. He might have been there. Jason, you were down on the field, so maybe you can correct me on that. But
yeah, I had the same question. Just because I didn't, I don't really honestly know. There's so many of those guys. But no, he
didn't take a snap. Certainly,
it's a big deal. It really is. When we just talked about it, Auburn ran the ball really well against Penn State last year. It didn't matter because unless you have a couple of 60-yard touchdown runs where you're finishing drives, it's really hard to score unless you have some chunk yardage plays in the passing game. And even like last week, TJ Finley made a good throw on Javarius Johnson to get him down inside the 5. But if he throws it on time, it's a touchdown. And he patted the ball a couple of times, and then he threw him almost out of bounds. Now, he did make the catch, but he couldn't turn upfield, couldn't do anything with it. It's just those things right there, like, throwing on time and making plays and give. Right now, Javarius Johnson is the guy. I think he has 7 catches for 158 yards or whatever. He only has 8 targets. That tells me he needs to have 8 targets a game, not in 2 games. He needs to be a guy that they throw the ball to a bunch at this point because he's the one guy that I look at and go, that guy can make plays. Shedrick Jackson has been solid. But he hasn't been a huge playmaker for this team now. I thought he was going just a step away from taking one to the house the other day on the sidelines. A guy made a pretty good tackle on the side there. But, we had Camden Brown. We haven't seen him any, and that was the guy they talked about a good bit in preseason. Finally saw Tavares Dawson, get a couple of targets and made a catch last week. But that's the step that has to come. It's not 1988. You're just not going to win games by running the ball 65 times. You might win one, but you're not going to win a bunch of them. And so they got to find a way to create some explosive plays in the pass game. And if you can't do that against Penn State, then you're going to be. And I think where we're headed to is a 20-17, 18-16, something kind of game like that, where it looks like an old Big Ten game.
Yeah, would you say so? VAR has 7 catches on the season. He might lead the nation in near touchdowns because both of his big catches in the first game, and then this one, I feel bad for him. He's gotten close to the end zone about 3 times. We'll wrap it up here in just a second because I wanted to just get a quick one here in the midweek before obviously we got the round table where we'll really dive into what is Auburn's biggest game of the season. so far. But something, Mark, we talked about before we started was the NFL game last night, between the Broncos and the Seahawks, and sort of a head scratching coaching decision to not just go for it on 4th and 5, instead kick a 64-yard field goal. That brings me to something that I thought about last night, Mark, was, we saw in these games last year, and maybe it was a little bit of hindsight, but wondering after the fact, would it have made more sense there for Brian Harsin to take this route instead of another one and put his guys in a better position here? This is the first time this season, I think, where you can't throw a 20-yard post on 4th and 1. You can't make some of those decisions that they had toward the end of last season. I remember you at South Carolina. You were the one who asked him. Tank Bigsby wasn't even in the game on 4th and 1 when they went for it in the first half against them. So I say all that to say that these are two very accomplished head coaches. But this is James Franklin's 9th Penn State team. He absolutely should feel like he has the talent and he has the coaching ability to go in here and win against an Auburn team that maybe is in a down year. And so in that sense, I think Auburn absolutely needs a good coaching day on Saturday afternoon. They can't get out coached in this game because they don't have enough going for them, particularly on offense, I think, to make up for it.
Yeah, that will definitely be something to watch. Crazy stat about Penn State coming into the season. They were 11-11 in the 2 previous seasons. And you wouldn't think that because they'd had a lot of success under James Franklin in the Big Ten, but they really have dropped off. They actually had a losing record. I think it was 4-5 in the Big Ten last season. And it's an important game for James Franklin too, because, I think the honeymoon's over with him and Penn State fans up there. And they've had some really good recruiting classes, but they haven't shown the results on the field from those good classes. And I'm really curious to see what happens this game. I love big intersectional matchups early in the season. They're fun to watch. That's the essence of college football. And we don't get enough of them some years. And, Auburn tried for years to get Penn State to play home and just wasn't able to pull it off until this 2-year deal was arranged. And, one of the things I'm really curious about moving forward is, with a 12-team playoff, will that make these games more common or less common? And I sure hope the answer is more common, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. I've covered a lot of Auburn games, but this will be the first time a Big Ten team has come to Jordan-Hare Stadium when it was a Big Ten team. I saw Maryland come in, but Maryland was not in the Big Ten at that time. Same with Rutgers. And I saw that Nebraska team, back when Nebraska was really good, come in out of the Big 8, Big 12 conference and put a whipping on one of Pat Dye's early teams. And those are all memorable games. And I don't really, when they play somebody like, Mercer or, Louisiana Monroe and stuff like that, those are not memorable games normally. But, when they play these teams from power conferences, that's something fans get excited about and remember for years. And I'm really looking forward to this game on Saturday. I think it's going to be old school Auburn atmosphere, fans into the game, a lot of noise and a lot of intensity. So, the players certainly were talking about they're excited for the all orange, and they were basically saying their fans are going to show up and give them a home field advantage. So that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, Auburn needs its own Tommy Agee moment this weekend. That Maryland game, Tommy Agee was a fullback, and all the eyes were on everybody else, and Tommy Agee runs for over 200 yards. They need that. Hey, Jarquez Hunter can do that. He's a guy that deserves more touches the way their offense is playing now. Maybe Jarquez Hunter has one of those games that we saw him have early in the year last year. They need somebody to have one of those moments on offense in this Saturday.
Yeah, he and Tank were certainly not the issue in Happy Valley last year. That was not the coming out party, because I think Jarquez had the longest run in program history the previous week, but that's when we sort of realized that, okay, he's going to have a good year for a freshman. I think he had that big hurdle on the final drive there. So, yeah, I think everybody fingers crossed for a great game. From what I understand, all the Auburn fans that went up there last year, despite the loss, had an incredible time visiting, and obviously enjoyed a great environment. So you hope that'll be exactly the case. It seems like that's sort of, careening that way, that's going to be the case on Saturday. I certainly don't see this being a blowout any way or the other. So I think it should be setting up for a great matchup. So again, Thursday will be the roundtable with everybody. We'll dive deep and give our predictions. Thank you guys so much for listening today to this episode of the Auburn Undercover podcast. If you guys liked it, go leave us a 5-star review. That's the number one thing that helps us out. The intro and outro music is by Beats by Mordecai. You guys can follow him on Twitter, SoundCloud, and Instagram. And until the next episode, we will talk to you guys later. Everybody enjoy the rest of the week.